Good evening, and welcome to a walk with Tilly on another balmy summer's eve in the British countryside. And a beautiful evening it is too. And I think finally we're coming to the end of the crazy hot weather that we've had, which is so unusual in the UK, or certainly for extended periods of time. I think there's on the forecast is rain for tomorrow, so that'll be interesting. And although still quite warm, but gradually the temperatures are supposed to reduce during the week, so back to a little bit more normal, which I think Tilly will quite like, because we're having to wait till quite late in the evenings to go out for a walk and leave very early in the morning. So today, well, there's nothing specific that to be honest, I've actually avoided the news this weekend almost in its entirety. Try and think about other things occasionally, but as I've been walking, there's a few questions that are playing on my mind. I suppose the first and probably the most important one is why, when there is so much data to suggest that we are facing a cliff edge of really significant problems in the UK. And by significant problems I mean we have high inflation, we have actually tipped into a contraction in the economy. There are obvious and significant problems within not just our public services, but the public amenities, the power, water. All these things have we're not just facing rising costs in what would seem to be for certainly a massive chunk of the society, in a way that I don't think people have known before. I'm not sure that people are really comprehending, or perhaps it's a malaise, or they just are convinced that our government will eventually wake up and decide to do something just prior to the imminent metaphorical axe falling, because a significant proportion of the population just will not have the money to be able to deal with a price rise in their power. Utility costs jumping by such astronomical amounts. And when I say astronomical amounts, I mean there is no other way of describing it. That it's astronomical. You don't go there. There is now discussion that in the quarter after next, heading into spring, we could be looking at £5,000 a year as a price cap for power. £5,000 a year, which is that's a five-fold increase on where it was a couple of years ago. That's obviously not going to be something. That kind of level is not going to be something that a significant amount of people are going to be able to just build into their day-to-day existence. When you're looking at bills going from £100 a month to £500 a month, I'm fairly sure that a significant proportion of society, that's more money than they than they possibly would have spare if they cut everything else out, everything that you could possibly be flexible in out of their life. It's £100 a week. I think the average person only earns about... what are we looking at? I'm not sure what it currently is, I'd have to check, but I think it's around, probably nationwide, around 25,000 a year. Well, 25,000 a year works out to, about 500 a week, £100 a tax, £400 a week. So people have an income, and this is the average. So this is way up. The vast majority of people, more than half of people, will earn less than that. But even if, let's push it up, let's say it's 30,000, so what are we looking at, 600, so let's take the tax out, that makes it £500. If you suddenly suggest that people have to spend 1/5, 20% of their income just on their power, the utility power, whereas they were spending... it would be less than 5%. Where is that additional money going to come from? There's only one or two places. It's either going to come in massive cuts to their other expenditure, which I don't see most people having. When you look at rent and food are also climbing, let's say just by inflation by 10%, or if some of those people are in a position, and a lot of them won't be, this is going to be a small percentage, they're in a position to have a mortgage, but interest rates are rising, so that's putting pressure on those bills. The only place that can come from is the spending they choose to do on optional things, which is what keeps the economy literally running. If you take away people's optional spend, so they don't go to the cinema, they don't buy clothing, they don't use restaurants, they don't get takeaways, because they can't do any of those things en masse, you're just going to have a cyclical collapse in the economy across the board. When optional spending just falls through the floor, which for a massive percentage of the country, and we're talking maybe 25-30% of the country, have no discretionary spending anymore, the cost to the economy is going to be enormous. This concerns me, that I don't think that, because of the ineptitude and the economical philosophy of the current administration, I think they've either chosen to actively ignore it, or they think it's not going to happen, or there appears to be literally no forward thought of the consequences of inaction. I have a very basic understanding of economics, to sort of graduate level. I certainly wouldn't consider myself an economist, but my understanding would suggest that if you take a significant percentage of the population, and when I say significant I mean perhaps a quarter, maybe as much as a third, and you take away their discretionary spending where it is completely tied into covering the basics, and you live in a society that runs predominantly, we're a service economy, we don't make stuff, we interact with each other, supplying with each other with services, there's going to be I don't see how the economy can't drop off a cliff. I don't see, when they discussed that it's going to be a recession, I would think it's going to be a major recession. You could even go into an ongoing and increasing recession because of this, where the sensible thing to do would be to reduce, because fuel is so intrinsic to everything in our society, absolutely everything has a significant component of its cost that is made up in fuel, be it the transportation, the production, the power to supply the infrastructure that allows that to operate. cost of not acting to step in and stabilise those prices and keep them to within a reasonable rate of increase can only result in disaster, in absolutely unmitigated economic disaster. And I don't think that there are people being concerned enough about this. I'm going to have to watch some more economists and look for some reports and discussion about this, but it would seem almost impossible for there not to be a massive reduction in economic activity on the back of it. Now, France has taken a course of action where they have decided to limit those price rises to 4%, and the government will burden the cost, take the burden, bear the burden of the cost to smooth this through. Now, I have a feeling, because of the ongoing nature of the issue with the power supply, that will have to be longer than that, and there will be more price rises to come. But I can't see how you can have multiple 100% rises in the cost of basic utilities and continue to function as a society. There will be consequential, without massive intervention, it would be highly likely that some form of civil unrest will ensue. So I think we've gone very dark now. We're coming through the wood and it's getting dusk. The nights are drawing in so quickly. The camera is not good enough to actually pick up that there is still some light. I'm not walking in the pitch black, but it is getting very dark. There's young Tilly ahead, waiting for me to come back out into the light shortly. It's a beautifully warm evening though. So essentially they have to do something. It's how long they will wait and how much damage that inaction will cause, because there's an awful lot of businesses that must be making decisions based on what is happening now and the consequences of that. There must be a significant cost, quantifiable cost to inaction, and there isn't a need for it. It's one party that are still in power. There are only 3 people involved in that decision. One is the existing caretaker Prime Minister and 2 candidates. If they can't decide amongst themselves the course of action they want to take, then how are they considering themselves a functioning government? It's just ludicrous. Hopefully they will. The media again are failing by not putting pressure on them to come to some kind of decision. But let's hope next week things move. As I understand it, next week the opposition are going to put together and announce what they would do if they're in that position. Not that they have any power, influence, and the current front-runner for the Conservatives, Liz Truss, has said that she doesn't do things that the opposition suggests. Regardless. So they come up with a brilliant idea and you ignore it. That sounds clever. That sounds like a child. But anyway, let's see. Let's hope next week is better. Come on, Tilly. Good girl. Come on, lovely. Good girl. That's it. Good girl. Come on then. Anyway, good evening from myself and Tilly. Hope you have a lovely Sunday.